everybody. This is Wendy with Morris Murdock Escorted Tours. I am the operations manager for the Escorted Tour Division of Morris Columbus Travel. And we're excited to have you with us either live or watching this recording. We have been doing escorted tours for, well, I guess if we go back to the original companies, I could say we've probably been doing this for over 50 years. Tim Taggart is started with one of our original entities, you were saying, with what, Beehive? Is that right? So we're excited to have him with us today. Murdock Travel was started originally by the LDS Church to handle missionary travel and do different projects with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so it is very safe to say that doing church tours and visiting these sacred sites of the restoration, that I like to call them, has been something that we've been doing for many, many years. And we're thrilled to still be offering these kind of tours. Tim Taggart has been one of our tours, specifically with Morris Murdock Escorted Tours, for over 10 years now, but I'm going to let him introduce himself and what his background is in the church history, and I'll let you take it from there because you can definitely cover that.
Well, I started out teaching seminary way back ages ago, and started doing tours with my uncle, who was one of the founders of Beehive Travel, doing church history tours and Israel tours. Started in 1983, and have recruited many others many times since then. So I've been doing this for a long time. I spent my career working for the church in producing media for the church. They moved me in to produce media for seminaries and institutes, and then consolidated into the curriculum department, and then got a visual department. So I retired 10 years ago and have been doing travel and teaching since then. So this has been a part of my life for a long time.
I don't know anybody who enjoys traveling as much as you do. And I don't know if you enjoy traveling as much as you enjoy teaching, or is it teaching as much as you like traveling?
It's a passion, either way. And I love taking pictures. And so these are all pictures I've taken. So I've been doing that for a long time. They all work together, and it's pure fun for me.
Well, one of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to talk about changes in the church history sites, and how everything has changed over the years. And, you know, our history, when you talk about Israel, is so young, but at the same time, there's been so many different changes. And you kind of think, once you've been to these sites once, do you necessarily need to go back? Or how am I different than the last time I went to this? And is this site going to mean different things to me? And so there was nobody better with, of course, your background that we thought to cover this topic. And so Tim has prepared a little presentation for us. So I'm going to let you just go ahead and walk us through some of this information. And we're just excited to learn from you.
Great. So is the PowerPoint up on screen?
Yeah, you should be able to go from there.
All right. So this, of course, is the Hill Cumorah, 1907. The Anderson, who went around and did 8x10 glass plates of the church history sites. So let's talk a little bit about how things have changed over the years. So it's not moving.
Oh, all right. Let me see if maybe this is something that I can. I was going to say it was working just a minute ago. Maybe it was just being slow.
Okay.
There we go.
So I've got two tours that I do each fall. One is the American Heritage and Early Church History that does Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York, up the coast, includes Boston, and then the New England church history sites, as well as Palmyra and then Kirtland. And then I do another one that includes both of the eastern sites, Palmyra, Kirtland, as well as the other. So
just that small little section right there.
So I'm going to talk about both of these. Over the time, the one nice thing about Washington, D.C. is so much of it remains consistent and constant. Some things are changing. Mount Vernon, for instance, has been newly remodeled, restored, and now they let you take pictures inside, which is very gratifying after 30 years of sneaking them. The Washington, D.C. Temple, which has always been an icon,
and back open.
Fabulous. Now it's back open, fully refurbished. These are pictures from the 80s with the reflecting pool that I took then, but the reflecting pool is back. It's different and quite beautiful. It's a fabulous temple. The temples you could talk about separately. The Manhattan Temple, for example, is new. There never used to be a temple there when I started doing New York travel, but it's a really fun place to visit. New York is always iconic, but there are some things that have changed. The Twin Towers, for example, which we used to go up in Twin Towers every single time and have that view of the city. And now we have the memorial that's a big hole in the ground. It's really sobering, but very beautiful. The skyline of Manhattan is just fantastic. When we go up north to New England, I love visiting those church history sites like this in Topsfield with 5 generations of Joseph Smith Sr.'s ancestors who lived in Topsfield. We have a brand new monument to the Smith family in the Pine Grove Cemetery where those 5 generations of Smiths were buried, and this was just dedicated last year. So that's a new thing in New England. Of course, the birthplace, if you've never been to the birthplace, there is a spirit of place about that is just remarkable. It's a beautiful spiritual location. As we head over to Palmyra, there are so many sites. You know, the Peter Whitmer farmhouse, this is the way it looks now, but it wasn't many years ago. And this was only built in 1980 for the sesquicentennial. And you can see the trees have grown pretty dramatically over that time. So many things have changed like that. But this is a real tribute to the organization of the church.
So it's a full rebuild. There's nothing authentic except
the location. Yeah. So the Sacred Grove, we've had quite a history of the Sacred Grove, but it has changed too. Over the last number of years, they've begun to let it go back to nature. And it's just a beautiful thing. Here I am with my sweetheart on our honeymoon in 1972, but the Sacred Grove is still sacred. One of the remarkable things, if many of you might have been on a church history tour years ago or just on your own visiting the Smith home, this is the Anderson picture from 1907. Here's me in 1972. But look at the way the home looks now.
Wow.
They've restored the home, took off all the stuff that was added over the years, and this is the original home. They've done such a beautiful job with the home. One of the most remarkable things, you see that straight road down the center that goes past the Smith farm? That was the original highway. The church has paid to have the highway moved around the entire Smith property so that portion of the road that's in the Smith farm is part of a private walk. We'll show you the same thing in Kirtland, but that's remarkable. Notice
that's amazing. I had no idea.
It's just so dramatic. And of course, the log home, I remember for so many years stopping along the highway saying, somewhere here is where the home was built. Then BYU did infrared aerial photography, located the foundation, then they excavated, and now they've restored the original home from which Joseph Smith walked to the grove for the first vision and had his experience with Moroni in this beautiful little home and this upstairs, which is so remarkable to visit. It's such a blessing to be able to have that. And of course, the Smith farm, so much of it now looks much like it did then. And this is the view of the Palmyra, New York Temple from the Sacred Grove. President Hinckley built this specifically so you can look from the windows of the temple towards the Sacred Grove. It's really remarkable. It's a beautiful temple. We love visiting there with our groups. And it's always something special. The Hill Cumorah is remarkable. This, of course, again, 1907. Notice how it's completely denuded of trees. And
it's definitely a hill.
Yeah, when Willard Bean went back and served a 20-year mission there, one of the things he did is obtain that hill for the church, and then started
Isn't
also.
that an interesting
Yeah,
story?
it's a great story.
Wow.
And started planting trees and things. This, of course, is the way it has looked for years, with the pageant set up and the chair set up to watch the pageant. Everyone enjoyed the fabulous pageant at Hill Cumorah. One of the most striking things now, visiting the Hill Cumorah, is seeing it all planted to wild grass and wildflowers. So the hill itself is being restored to a primitive state. And it's really, it's beautiful, but so different. The monument's still on top. Over the years, it has been turned 90 degrees from facing north to facing west, but still beautiful. I just had to tell this little story. You'll see the Ben Franklin store in Palmyra, New York. I was selling Iggy Snow Block makers and decided that no matter what, I would sell them at the 5 and Dime, Ben Franklin 5 and Dime. I met Paul Cherry, the manager. He took me on a tour of the store. This, of course, is where the Book of Mormon was printed. And we visited for a while, and he said, "Do you think the church would ever be interested in this building?" He said, "It's getting too hard to keep up." I said, "I'd be happy to ask for you." And so when I came back, I contacted the church history department, and that's how we got the Ben Franklin building.
And that's how that came to be. That's incredible.
And of course, this is now a wonderful visitor center and a remarkable place to show how the Book of Mormon was printed and published. I want to take just a second with this, with the Aaronic Priesthood Restoration site.
Definitely.
Because one of the curious questions, one of those facts that everybody knows, the problem is it's not true, is where the Aaronic Priesthood was restored. Most people, if you ask them, would tell you it was along the banks of the Susquehanna River. And the reason came, the church history department found out the reason why everyone knows that. It's because when this picture was published, the caption said it was along the banks of the Susquehanna River that the priesthood was restored. But in doing the priesthood restoration site, the history department researched every part of this, and what they discovered is that's not at all what the record says. The record says the priesthood was restored in the sugar bush or the maple grove near Joseph Smith's home, not on the banks of the river. In fact, the river was so busy during that period, there would have not been a time.
A quiet
time
place
during this time. So the Susquehanna River is where the baptisms occurred. And then, of course, Melchizedek priesthood is restored along the banks of the river somewhere between Colesville and Harmony. So the location of this site, you can always find where Harmony is by seeing where the Susquehanna River dips into Pennsylvania from the New York-Pennsylvania border. The plan for this, notice the existing Highway 171 going near the bottom, and then notice the heavy dark dashed line above that. That's where they moved the highway again for this site so that it could be a premier site.
Well, they did it once. They knew they could do it again.
Well, they've done it 3 times. Okay. I'll show you the 3rd time in Kirtland. But this has made such a difference. So here's the site now. With the highway, is that now, well, it looks like a dirt road, because it is.
Yeah.
And the major highway up above. Here are the major homes that are there. And it's really a remarkable site. The McCune Cemetery with Joseph and Emma's first child buried there.
I love going to the cemeteries, and there's so just the authentic sites and the history.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. And Emma's parents are buried there as well. The large church that's there now serves as a visitor center. And then you can go back on the tour that includes the Aaronic Priesthood Restoration area. Notice the arrow to the sugar bush, which is where the Aaronic Priesthood is restored. Now they have a major walkway under the highway, so you can go out. Here's Isaac and Elizabeth Hale's beautiful home, just fabulous furnished, and Joseph and Emma's home, in which much of the translation of the Book of Mormon occurred. And it's a great place to visit, and you'll see the scenes from the church movies that are filmed there on that site. And And notice the property on the right, that rectangular property, one at Priesthood is restored on the top end of that, at the Maple Grove, and the bottom end of that is at the Susquehanna River, where the first baptisms occurred. Speaking of rivers,
just a little thing.
Yeah,
here.
the Niagara Falls is always a part of our church history tours between Palmyra and Kirtland, and it's wonderful. I always share a poem my great-grandfather wrote, Paul P. Pratt, about Niagara Falls and kind of the eternal nature of Niagara Falls. That's a real joy. When we get to Kirtland, the temple itself hasn't changed that much. You can see this from the picture in 1907. Here's a picture I took last year on tour. The temple itself is beautiful, but some things have changed. For instance, the Newell K. Whitney store. This is 1907, and notice through the year, here's in the 80s. Now the church had begun to work on that, but notice the car sitting right there?
Yeah.
We are standing right on the major highway that went right between the Newell K. Whitney store and home. So the major highway went right through the middle of that, which was a real preventative of having a good visitor experience in Kirtland. So one of the challenges was to move the road. So this is the way the road went. Chillicothe Road went right between Newell K. Whitney's store and home out to the main highway, the Kirtland Road. And so the church managed to have that moved, and that took quite a bit of work. And I've got some great stories I always tell on tour.
I was going to say, so which was the first road that they moved?
I don't know. Can't remember. It was all around the same time.
I don't know why that just
everything's
impresses me so much.
It just changes everything. So Palmyra is ours. Kirtland is ours. And
except for the ownership of the temple.
Yes. Yeah, for now. But notice how that road changed. So there's the big new road on the left there, and the old road there is a big intersection and paved, but that will change. So this area is the historic Kirtland area, and here's the plan for this wonderful visitors experience. Bill's a Newell K. Whitney store in the 90s, and I was there year after year as they were doing all the refurbishments. Now, of course, it's finished and it's beautiful. Includes the store itself, which is remarkable, and of course, the School of the Prophets, where the word of wisdom was revealed, as well as so many marvelous experiences, including visions of the Father and the Son in that room that we share when we're there.
Now, is this an authentic house, and it has just been restored?
Yes, this is.
It is not rebuilt.
Yes, this is all authentic. The real thing. Here's the Newell K. Whitney home in 1907, and here it is today. I love, because that really hasn't changed very much. They just have basically restored it. Beautiful. Of course, now we have this beautiful visitor center with a marvelous film and mural. But we also have now the Kirtland Sawmill, which has been rebuilt, and the Ashery, which is quite interesting and a real money maker for the United Order back in the day. Also the Johnson Inn. The John Johnson family moved to Kirtland after all of the opposition down in Hiram and built this inn, and this is there. Some things are still going on. Joseph and Emma's home is being restored by the church right now. Also the store, and here they are in process. Here's the home that they're working on it. This is last September.
That was last
and this
year.
is the store. Notice this. They found the actual building, and they're putting it in the situation it was in then. Isn't that interesting? There's a lot of work to be done, but this will be a part of our Kirtland experience in the future. Quite excited about that.
One of those, if the walls could talk, the stories they would tell.
Yeah, that's right. The Kirtland Temple is such a remarkable experience. Kirtland Temple Quarry. We go to the Kirtland Temple Quarry every year and see where the stones are actually quarried for the Kirtland Temple. The John Johnson home in Hiram is beautiful. It's been restored wonderfully. This is the room where Section 76 of the Doctrine and Covenants was revealed, the vision on the 3 degrees of glory, and where Joseph was hauled out of bed and mobbed, and where the young Murdock twins' boy died from exposure because of that.
That floor has always intrigued me.
Yeah,
It's just...
Isn't that fascinating? So colorful.
Yeah.
And I just love that. Well, we fly down to Missouri and start our journey with Missouri on the Missouri and Illinois portion of that. So let's quickly this is the temple site. This is the Independence, Missouri temple site, 1907. Here's the marker that's been on it since 1976 during the bicentennial. And here's the location of the cornerstone just last year, looking at that temple site. There's so much to be said there. There's the Community of Christ temple, upside down ice cream cone, some call it, and the visitor center, which does a marvelous job of talking about the pioneers and the publishing the Book of Commandments. Here's the Kansas City temple, which is actually built in Liberty, in the same area with the Liberty Jail. Liberty Jail is fabulous, and it's a great teaching opportunity. So this is the way it looked from the 90s to 2020. But now they've taken out the diorama, and it's an authentic experience in the real building.
I know that they had changed things during the pandemic when everything was closed down. So that's...
All of the sites are now overseen by the historical department of the church and not missionary.
And not the missionaries.
So it changes things somewhat. I found this fascinating, those trees. I have pictures of those trees when they're about 12 feet high. Yeah. And now you can't even read the statement on the courthouse anymore. Of course, the monument to the three witnesses and also where Oliver Cowdery is buried. This is his burial site. Far west, the temple site in far west, beautiful. So many great stories to be told. One of the most remarkable changes, and it isn't shown in the pictures, this is a picture in 1907. Adam-on-Diamond, my first visit there was 1972, and filled with thorns and thistles and briars everywhere. And this is now it's one of the great temple sites we have. It's a great outdoor temple site.
You know, this is one of the things that I tell people all the time. They're like, well, I went with my family, back and I did this or I did that. And I'm like, so what did you think about Adam-on-Diamond? And, some people either say, well, yeah, it was good, or, we didn't even stop. They said there was nothing to see there. And I'm like, this is why you go with a historian, an educator, because the significance and the importance, and how do you appreciate a valley, without knowing the purpose and significance?
This is one of the 5 or 6 most important physical sites on Earth.
I mean, think about that statement.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's just remarkable. And so we share the spiritual reasons why this is what it is and what it's going to be. And it's a remarkable place to visit, but you have to be prepared before you visit there. And for those who don't know anything, they won't know anything when they leave.
That's right.
It's kind of like a parable.
Yeah.
If your eyes don't see and ears to hear, you're out in the cold. Now, look at this picture. This is looking towards the Nauvoo temple site, 1907, and here is the site itself. That's the temple block, 1907. When I first started visiting it, this is what it looked like. That little circle you see in the top is the well at the base of the baptismal font. So you have this hole in the ground, and that's all the temple site was. They had a moonstone, and then they put a sunstone. This is my dad. By the sunstone, which, by the way, that sunstone is now in the National Museum of Art, or National Museum, History Museum.
Really?
Smithsonian.
Really? Yeah. In the Smithsonian? Yeah. I didn't know.
We were there in a group in 1989 when they gathered at the temple site, when they rededicated the Carthage. Notice, that's me up on the camera. I also still had my daytime job, so we had the group visiting, and I went up and ran the camera.
And you're like, okay, hold on real quick. I got to go do a thing.
Yeah, Bob, the Brian Baker, enjoy that. And also was there when they did the cornerstone laying for the Nauvoo temple. We now have this fabulous monument to the prophet Joseph Smith and to the restoration.
What an incredible, and important place.
Laying the cornerstone. what a joy to be a part of something so remarkable as a part of the restoration. The visitor center's changed quite a bit. Many things are still the same, and it's such a wonderful place to visit. The Mansion House and the Joseph Smith properties are fabulous. The red brick store, where so many of the things were stored, including the temple ordinances, the Relief Society organized. The first washings and anointings were done in that office. The 70s hall, Jonathan Browning's gunsmith shop, one of my favorites. But of course, the key to it all is the Nauvoo temple. One of the neat experiences to see change is the Nauvoo burial ground. It used to be such a mess. And finally, the church traded some property in Nauvoo for this property that had been owned by the organized church and cleaned it up. We were there. There's a story with this, but I don't have time to tell it, about my great-grandfather.
That's what you're going to say for the tour?
Yeah,
okay.
You'll love the story. But and it just so happened there was tons of stuff going on, and we were there when President Hinckley dedicated this. And so we had our group there as the dedication occurred of the site.
That's really remarkable. Yeah.
Well, just to conclude, Nauvoo is so fabulous. Carthage, of course, has changed dramatically over the years. And we were there for the rededication in '89 as a group. And of course, the room where the martyrdom occurred, here's a viewpoint you don't often see through the hole of the door, where the bullet passed through that door of the window. Speaking of changes, that tree you see out the window is no longer there. They cut it down. Last year it was gone.
Was it because it was damaged? Or
I assume because it got old and diseased probably, but that was always my favorite picture to take, framed with that tree. But that tree is gone now. So we stop in Hannibal and always have a great experience, and then end up flying home from our wonderful experience. So there's just a viewpoint. You may want to.
I was going to say, we can look at the full picture of the temple. There's so many fun stories in the temple. I moved to Utah and became involved in the company back in '94. So I can remember hearing about this when it was announced, and then the building and the number of tours that we all did once the temple was dedicated and people were able to go. And I remember one of the funnest times I had was having a group inside the temple, and they were in a session, and they're like, well, feel free to walk around. And it was, I always said, it just felt like I was running around a house, just kind of looking around, and just so many great things. And I don't know if they let you do those kind of things anymore, but I think that's the differences between, how things change over the years. Yeah. And it is amazing to be able to go back and you think about our own personal growth and kind of, again, going back to, I'm sure if I would like to think that, next time I get back there, because it's been too long, but like Israel, it's someplace that I would really love to go again, because you do feel a spirit when you're there.
Every time. And it's always different. And
it is different. Because and it teaches you differently. Yeah. And I said exactly, like our own personal progression, the things that the Spirit knows that they can teach us with. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, and you're certainly welcome at this point to unmute yourself if you do. I just know that we've been so blessed by having these sites restored, and to be able to see our living history. And I was thinking about one of the pictures that you showed, and it's like, well, I think it was Adam, and it's like, okay, could you imagine being there in a couple hundred years or whenever down the road? It's like, do you remember when it was just this, when it was just this empty thing? But, even, the rededication, I think the most recent one was the Susquehanna River Priesthood restoration. Yeah. Isn't that the most recent one? And I know that they've got other sites in the works and different things that they're restoring. And and you look at what's happening even here in Salt Lake City with Temple Square and what that's going to look like, in 5-10 years, and just the blessing that it is for people to go and see. So
exactly.
I can't wait for you to document it in all of your pictures. And I just appreciate your time and talking us through some of these changes that you've seen personally, as well as some of those glass plate images.
Yeah.
Some of those are so just incredible, and so many stories to be told. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much for your presentation. We thank you guys for being with us today, and we hope that at some point we'll see you on a future tour, either with Tim Taggart or one of our other mini tours that we have to the church history site. The fall, as you mentioned, is a beautiful time to go. The weather is so friendly and the colors are amazing. There's still a wonderful reason to be there in the summer, especially in Nauvoo. There's such a fun energy, and there's still pageants going
the pageant in Nauvoo is tremendous, the best.
Yeah, the Nauvoo pageant is still going on, as well as they still do the British church history pageant there. And speaking of British church history pageant, that's happening this year again in England.
Yeah.
So
and that's a fabulous pageant.
Oh, yeah.
Great
Well, we'll have to do a thing on pageants.
Yeah.
That'll be a lot of fun. So, well, thank you everybody for watching and staying tuned. Our website is mmetours.com. MM for Morris Murdock, E for Escorted, and the word tours with an S.com. And you can find all of our church history tours there. You can see a bio of Tim Taggart and many of our other tour directors who do our educational tours all over the world. So again, thank you so much, and we hope you have a great day.
Thanks.
Safe travels.